Stable housing should be the essential foundation upon which families in America can build a good life. But housing is not affordable in this country. Especially my generation has pretty much given up hope of ever being able to have stable housing since the cost is high to purchase a home, and the rising cost of rent, student debt, healthcare, and everyday expenses prevent us from being able to stay housed, let alone purchase a home. In fact, my office opened up one of the first satellite congressional offices on a university's campus. I thought the top issue people would come and ask us for help on would be student debt, but in fact, the top two were food insecurity, hungry students, and people who were homeless and didn't have a place to live. This is a personal thing for me. When I decided to run for Congress, I experienced homelessness for many months when I was priced out of my apartment after the rent moratorium hike was taken away in the state of Florida just after COVID. I always joked to myself that at least if I won my race for Congress, I wouldn't deal with housing issues again. I was elected to Congress, and as a congressman-elect, I was denied to every apartment complex I applied to in Washington, D.C. I joked about having to couch surf on news, not knowing it'd become national news that a new member of Congress was essentially homeless in his new place that he'd have to work in. I say this to say this is an issue that's far-reaching that impacts all Americans. And even when I took out a loan to be able to pay the high cost of rent moving to D.C., I was denied the opportunity to pay the high rent too. First-time home buyers have been driven down to 21% of the market, and the median age of first-time home buyer is now 40 years old, the highest ever recorded. Families are getting priced out while big money investors are cashing in. In the first quarter of 2025, investors bought nearly 27% of homes sold, the highest share in at least 5 years and way above the number of first-time buyers. That is not a cultural shift. That is what happens when government tilts the field towards corporate buyers and then shrugs when regular people lose. The commodification of housing has gotten way out of control. There is a crisis that has been made even worse at every opportunity by greed and turning the American dream into a commodified asset. Plus, tariffs, an underdeveloped workforce, and outdated zoning laws prevent the growth of housing supply. All as the FTC, DOJ, HUD, and Treasury can and must rapidly mobilize to lower housing costs today. And all it takes is the political will and focus. It to being a state and local issue, but there is a lot we can do at the federal government. Political will and focus, and unfortunately, are absent right now with the Republican triple majority. In fact, President Donald Trump is actively making it worse. He is driving up the costs to build homes through tariffs on construction materials and fixtures. His reckless immigration policies are going to shrink our workforce capacity at a time when immigrants make up about a fourth of the construction workforce. Again, a fourth of the construction workforce. Now facing backlash over high prices, the president is suddenly saying he's on board with a Democratic proposal to ban institutional investors from being able to buy single-family homes. We welcome this. President Trump received a lot of attention when he announced this month, quote, "I'm immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes, and I will be calling on Congress to codify it," end quote. But earlier this week, the president revealed the details of his executive order, and it falls short. This executive order does not include an outright ban on institutional home purchases, but just limits conventional mortgage guarantees for these transactions. What he failed to mention is that most of these transactions happen in cash or outside of Fannie and Freddie financing and will not be impacted by his executive order. For President Trump and congressional Republicans to truly implement this proposal that the president himself called for, they must buck the same Wall Street investors and corporations that they've also been delivering massive tax handouts for. So I'll believe it when I see it. But we're here to work together on it. Trump helped to create the problem that we're in. Blackstone built the leasing company Invitational Homes into a single-family rental giant that got rich by buying up houses at distressed prices, and then it became the template for gentrification, displacement, and turning our neighborhoods into portfolios. GAO report in 2017, Fannie Mae backed a 10-year, $1 billion loan to Invitational Loans. Market-based solutions alone are not going to fix this crisis. But it gets worse. It's not just corporate ownership that's driving up housing costs for families. It's also corporate coordination and extraction. The Biden-era Department of Justice sued RealPage for colluding to rig rents using algorithms that drive up prices and harm renters. Then the same Biden-era DOJ sued 6 of the nation's largest landlords for colluding to rip off American renters. Names like Greystar, Blackstone, Camden Property Trust, Cushman and Wakefield, and Pinnacle, Willow Bridge, and Cortland. So my question for all of us here is that if this hearing is truly about housing affordability, we should really start with a lot of the rent inclusion schemes that we see that the DOJ itself has said harms millions of renters. We should start by tightening standards on corporate landlords and their pricing software. We should start with investors that routinely outbid families for starter homes. And I invite my Republican colleagues to join me in co-sponsoring legislation that will help achieve these things. One of my bills is the End Junk Fees for Renters Act. Another one is co-sponsoring a bill I will soon be introducing to push back on Wall Street, turning manufactured home communities into captive revenue streams. This bill incentivizes states to adopt strong opportunity to purchase protections so manufactured homeowners, especially seniors and working families on a fixed income, can get a real chance to buy the land under their home before private equity and other large investors can swoop in, jack up the cost of the lot rent, and pile on new fees. Massive deregulation is very dangerous. And need I not remind us of things that happen in Florida, such as the tragic Surfside collapse and other issues like that we see across the entire nation. We don't need a hearing where it's just going to be folks pushing to take away standards that are important for Americans while enriching big developers and removing the housing standards that keep bad actors in line. Getting rid of these protections is not a silver bullet or strong housing plan. The process can be made faster. We know this, but we can do that without compromising important standards that keep working families safe. So I'm very excited about this hearing. I mentioned why this is very personal to me. I routinely knock doors in my district, and the housing crisis is the top one on top of everyone's minds, Democrats, Republicans, tenants, and homeowners alike. And in my state of Florida, we're experiencing a housing insurance crisis, the rising cost of rent, it being too damn expensive, and we're in a situation. I was asked recently what I think is one of the number one issues impacting young people, and I said it's the fact that I'm worried as young people grow older, we'll never own a damn thing in our lives, whether it's our home, to the music we listen to the movies we watch, to the car that we drive. And we are going down that road, and so housing is something we have to take care of. Excited about this